Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back and welcome to part 2 of everything you want, well, everything you need to know, everything you need to know about guitar amplifiers. So today we're going to cover tube amps, trans tube amps, hybrid amps, which are solid state and tube combined, solid state amps, and modeling amps, okay? Now, with tube amps, they've been around since the Stone Age. We all know it's like vacuum tubes. They heat up, they glow, it's kind of pretty. And they suck a lot of hydro. They also happen to be very high maintenance, very fragile when moving them around. Because if you bang them the wrong way, shit can go wrong in a bad way. Otherwise, they're great amps and they're very, very clean power, which is awesome. Now, newer tube amps, of course, they're not as nice as the old stuff. But hey, you know what? There's still some nice stuff out there for newer stuff. But they are very high maintenance, very high cost to maintain them, compared to any other amplifier out there, okay? But they do offer very clean power, which is nice. And but they do also, at the same time, suck up a lot of hydro. So if you're a hydro conscientious person, you might not want to go near a tube amp unless it's a very small one, okay? And depending on your needs, depends on the size of amp you need too. But also, all amplifiers, period, no matter what they are, all have different voicings in the amps and in their speakers. And you will not get the sound of a Marshall JCM by ripping its speaker out and throwing it into your Mesa Boogie. It doesn't work that way, okay? So you can't swap speakers and get the same sound that way. Anyways, continuing on. Trans tube amps. These are amplifiers with a solid state trans tube circuit, okay, which emulates a tube and gives you a tube-like sound out of your amplifier. These are awesome. When PV first came out with these, I was like, oh man, you know, so much cleaner. You know, it's like, wow, this is awesome stuff. And I still like the older PV amps. I don't like any of their new stuff. I think it's all crap. Anyways, they should have stuck with what worked. Old school. But anyway, a lot of amp companies could have done that. Hybrid solid state tube amps. These are a combination of solid state circuitry and tube circuitry. Okay, now, because our next one is going to be solid state, solid state would be, you got a lot of this shit inside. This is a solid state amp, okay? But you also have some tubes mixed in there as well. That's why they're hybrid amps. Now, these are not quite as expensive as a full-out tube amp. They are very clean sounding. Don't get me wrong, they're very clean. They are less costly. They still have a bit of a fragility area where you got to watch them. You know, don't bang them around too hard because there are tubes in there after all to deal with. Okay, but they are not as susceptible as a full-on tube amp. And though they do chew hydro, they don't chew as much hydro as a full-out tube amp does. And like I said, they are very clean amps. They do sound really good. Solid-state amps. Getting back to this again. Here's a pure solid-state amp. Okay. Now, these things are, of course, far cheaper than any tube combination. And this is just a straight, you know, gain and normal channel. So you've got two channels, clean and dirty, which most amps have that are regular amps. Okay. There was a lot of amps out there that were just nothing more than an amp. You had a volume, mid, volume, bass, mid, and tone control, and a power switch. That's it. 'Cause that's all you really need, to be honest. That's a pure amp to me. However, people wanted a gain circuit. At least, you know, they'd have some distortion that they could use before they could afford pedals. And that's kind of the reason why, you know, manufacturers started putting in that gain control or distortion. Some of them did a really good job with it. Some did a really shitty job. Fender, of course, did the really shitty job with their gain channel. And, of course, Marshall didn't do the world's best job either on their main gain channel either. At least they didn't on the Marshall 15-watt amp I had anyhow. So I can't knock all of the Marshalls, but yes, Fender, man, those guys really got to get their act together. Okay, so with solid state amps, these take two forms. Regular solid state, which is just your clean and your dirty channel. And then, of course, we move on to modeling amps. Now, tube amps are your most expensive. Trans tube lowers the price. Hybrid and solid state combined is kind of in between a solid state and a trans tube for pricing wise. And, of course, we have our modeling amps. Now, what's a modeling amp? Well, the most common form of a modeling amp is an amplifier that will emulate other cabs, okay, like 4x12s, 2x10s, etc., of different makes and speaker types, different heads too, okay, like your Mesa Boogies and your crates and your Marshalls and etc., 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 okay. they have many different modeling amps, so they can emulate these sounds, which will help you get closer to the tone of your favorite artist that you're trying to copycat and get their tones as best as possible anyway. So that's the kind of a nice thing about most your modeling amps out there. Now, one modeling amp that I happen to appreciate the most is actually my Boss Katana 100 1x12. It's a 100 watt amp. It's got power soaking in it, so I can go from 100 watts to 50 to half a watt. Even that half a watt is pretty damn obnoxious, let me tell you. People have no idea what wattage is about. But anyways, half a watt is still very powerful and can still chime the strings on my guitars that are hanging on the wall. Anyhow, so with the Katana, it's not trying to be everybody else. It's just its own, and it's got its own voice that they've put to it. And its emulation part or modeling part is all the Boss pedals, okay? And you can manipulate them in not only the main basic pedal setup that you would normally get access to in a pedal, but you can go far beyond that as well and manipulate other aspects of the pedals, which is really, really cool. So they did a great job. Now, when the Katana first came out on the market, they didn't even have software. They just pre-programmed the amp. Here you go. And, of course, later on they come out with the software, because that was a planned thing anyways. They just didn't do it at the same time, which was kind of dumb. But they have since rectified that situation, and they've also come up with firmware updates. And as they do updates, I'm sure we'll get access to any more new pedals that they do, and anything else that needs to be stabilized that's not quite stable, because we all know how updates work on computers. They fix one thing, something else goes wonky. So I'm sure, but I haven't run into any issues yet, so cross fingers. But anyways, so there's different modeling amps. Modeling amps can be, well, they can be inexpensive and they can be expensive depending on what you're going after too, right? And it's like anything else. PV's doing it, Marshall's doing it. Everybody's doing modeling amps, okay? Everybody, right? Pretty well. And it gives you a whole range of different levels of how much goodies you get for the money too, right? Now, I had a couple Fender Mustang 1V2 amps, as where my first modeling amps were. And of course, they try to emulate everything and everybody. And of course, you had your Fender pedals and racks in there, which were kind of okay, but you know, they're kind of not the best either. Really, I had a difficult time with those amps. I just set the two of them up as clean channels and ran them off my PA board, ran my pedals into the sucker, and away I went. And now, of course, I got a full PA system, separate amps, separate pedals. I'm all happy now. Everything's cool. And away we go. Now, modeling amps, they're kind of a little more pricier than a standard solid state amp, but you're getting a lot more for your money. But with anything, the more bells and whistles you get inside an amplifier, the problem that happens is more shit to go wrong, okay? The common problem that's been going on with modeling amps, especially the bad news part of them of blowing up, is because they're not putting a powerful enough power supply in there to run everything adequately. You're not getting enough power from your amplifier, so you are sacrificing quality of sound. You're getting your clipping range, instead of being at 7, you're down to like maybe 12 o'clock on the dial, okay? Or 2 o'clock versus 12 o'clock is where it starts to clip now, is around 12. And that's not necessarily a good thing. Even though you can drive more power, you can get louder, you tend to lose the clarity of your sound rather rapidly. Okay, so this can be yet another issue. But the good news is if you have a very high wattage amplifier, you have a lot of headroom, so you can go to high levels of output and stay very, very clean. Okay, so you want to have access to more wattage to get more headroom in a modeling amp, so it'll also run stabler and not run as hot. When you're trying to push more through the amp and you're in the clipping range, what's happening is you're overheating your circuits, and everything that's overheated, there's not enough cooling or even adequate cooling period, and that's why these amps are cooking too. Line 6 is notorious for cooking a lot of their amps for the simple fact of not enough proper cooling in there and lack of power in the power supply to run everything properly. Okay, so the more bells and whistles you want, the more you sacrifice your quality of sound in the end. Okay, and you are asking for trouble, like I said, at higher volumes, unless you have the wattage to compensate for that with you, so that you can stay pretty stable. Okay, now these are things that you need to know. Okay, I didn't do videos based on everything you want to know It's more of what you actually need to know, because you don't have to know about all the ins and outs of the circuits and how they're built and blah 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 and all that other bull stuff. What you need to understand is, this is information to help you with choices. It's also an encouragement that there's a lot of good points to all of these things, but there's also some drawbacks to them as well. And a lot of people are misinformed or not informed at all when they go into music stores, and I try to help people on my channel as best as I can to be able to make the best possible choices. That's why when I go on Facebook groups, that's where I got the idea for this video series, where it started, is because people will ask questions. Now, some questions are absolutely stupid and ludicrous, and even I won't answer them, or I'll be a bit of a jerk about it sometimes, I can admit. You can't make everybody happy, that's the thing, and there's some questions that really honestly should never be asked anywhere, but there is a lot of stuff that you do need to know and should know before going out and making purchases, so that you get the best possible purchase for your money, so you're not getting rooked, okay? Because you can get rooked very easily in music stores. I see it happen all the time, okay? Even good music stores, you do have the odd salesperson that is nothing more than an idiot, and he makes the sale of the wrong equipment to somebody. I mean, these guys are not on commission. Unless they are on commission, well, okay, then try and upsell, but there's no real need for it either at the same time. But anyways, that's a whole other set of videos together, which we'll get to in time. Anyways, so I hope you enjoyed this video series. It's only 2 parts, and I'm glad that I'm able to keep the time down and give you the basics, because that's all it's about, is the basics of stuff that you absolutely need to know before going out and doing stuff. Now, I'm not saying to stay away from any of these amps. I think all the amp types are very good. They all have their place, okay? And that's where it is at, and it's whatever your needs are depending on what you go for. It also has a lot to do with your budget as well. Where is your budget? Can you get around your budget? We have a company called Long McQuaid here, and they've really helped accelerate my growth in goodies, because they have a financing plan, which is great, because not many music stores do. So I can buy my stuff ahead of time, take it home, make my monthly payments. It's kind of like getting a personal loan, you know what I mean? And paying it off, except much cheaper interest. And it helps. It helps the musician out. We get to be able to get our goodies and do our stuff. And a lot of stores too, they'll have rental plans. Long McQuaid does. They have a rental thing where you can rent stuff. I rent a few things right now, just because right now I can't afford to put anything else on my account. And so I'm renting a few items right now, and they're on trial base too at the same time. I like the idea of renting because I get to try it for a while, no commitments. If I don't like it, I take it back after a month, say, here's your stuff back, and I'll go rent something else and try it out. Same as when I go for a tube amp, and I'm going to rent one. I may rent, more than one and then decide. It just depends on, where my state of mind is that day. But I won't be purchasing one right away. I will rent it because I want to see if I'm really going to use it, and if I'm really going to like how it works with my other stuff, because that's a big thing for me. And the only way I can know that is to bring the darn thing home, try it out for a month, try it out with my equipment, and if it works for me and it's good, then I'll buy it. And that's the nice thing about rentals. I did that with my Beat Buddy, actually. I'm going to still rent it for a few more months, and then I'm going to buy it, because that Beat Buddy saved my skin on so many different levels and has given me abilities that I never had before. Same thing as I also picked up this unit off of a friend of mine that I'm going to buy off him, and he gave me a good price on, so that's cool. And even though I have a lot of the stuff that's in here, there's some usable stuff in here for me, and that's another reason why I'll buy it. It gives me access to usable stuff, and of course the Digitech Trio pedal is another one. The Trio is something that I'm actually renting, and I'm going to buy it because it'll do stuff that the other stuff can't do, and it's kind of like, oh, this is going to help me out a lot, You know, and this is where we go after our equipment as musicians too. You know, we pick and choose our battles. But yes, don't take any of what I say as bad stuff. You know, each amp type has its purpose. Okay, they have different good and bad points to them. All right, I do have my own personal taste in some brands. It's just the way it is. We all are like that. You know, so anyways, that covers this. So I thank you very much for watching. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and sub and then click the bell for updates from the channel. And you'll always get updates. And we'll see you guys on the next video, eh? All right, rock on. Ciao.